made us the masters of the jungle. So we weren't afraid to go into no damn swamp. Me, I'm afraid to go into a swamp. I ain't going to no damn swamp. Okay? But these brothers and sisters were not afraid of the swamp because they was trained over a 50,000 year period in the jungles of Africa to handle anything like that. All praise is due to Allah. So they couldn't take a chance on that no more. So they did it that way, but then they made a mistake. They started killing people in 1963, and they slept 1955. They slept Farrakhan.
Wow.
He was a nobody. In 1955 and in the 60s, he was a nobody.
Wow.
He only became of prominence when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put him in the fire in New York after the assassination of Malcolm. And now you see what he grew into. But by the time that they figured out who he was, it was too late.
Wow.
They couldn't touch him because now he was protected by the plane and by his own people. As a matter of fact, those people who believe that the Nation of Islam had to do something with the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965, you answer me this. If the people in Harlem, who you say love Malcolm, if they thought that the Nation of Islam had killed Malcolm in 1965, why, when the New York Police Department attacked Mosque Number 7, when Minister Farrakhan was the minister there, when they attacked the Mosque Number 7 with the minister inside, and they came upstairs with guns to kill the minister, Allah protected the minister. They killed one of the brothers killed one of the police officers. They called for recruits, backup. And when the backup came, the people of Harlem could have stayed in their homes and just looked at it from their windows. But no, over 10,000 people from Harlem came down there.
That's right. That's right.
They surrounded the police. And the police had to ask Minister Farrakhan to get the people off of them so they could leave. They were not going to leave until Minister Farrakhan told them to leave, and he told the police. Now, when they leave, you leave. And all of y'all get out of Harlem by midnight. Okay? So if the people of Harlem, who you say love Malcolm, if they felt that the Nation of Islam had killed Malcolm, then why did they defend the Nation of Islam
Go ahead.
from the police? All they had to do was nothing. Why would they put their lives on the line? That's the proof
That's right.
that we had nothing to do with Malcolm, because the people of Harlem,
That's right.
who loved Malcolm, they protected Farrakhan
That's right.
and the Nation of Islam when the police attacked us.
That's right.
So shut up. Next question.
Wow. Man, that's that's mind blowing. That's within itself is a whole another interview.
Well,
especially,
I'm sorry I went off like that.
No. That was just. I mean, it's powerful because it's dispelling a lot of myths. I just heard recently in an interview with, and I don't want to try to put a highlight on his work, but Malik Zulu Shabazz interview with Professor James Smalls. He put some misinformation out there that the only street maneuver that we know of, quote, was when Malcolm commanded all of those FOI to go down to check on the brother that was beat by the police. That wasn't the only street maneuver that the Nation of Islam was known for. That's what they show you in the movie Malcolm X, where Malcolm holds up his hand and then directs the FOI down to the police station, so on and so forth. But what you just gave us in terms of the minister's effect on the people in Harlem shows us a completely different story.
Because it wasn't like Malcolm who was directing the FOI.
That's right.
Okay, the minister was directing the people of Harlem.
Yes.
to stay off the police.
Wow.
Whereas before, Malcolm was down there protecting the brother, I think it was Henson, who was beat up by the police. So it was an issue of police brutality. No, this time it was Minister Farrakhan saving the police from being beat up by the people. because the police was attacking him. And so the power of love that represents
Man.
is extremely scary to the enemy.
Yeah.
That the people would respond to put their lives on the line for the nation, and it would take the nation to get the people off their behinds.
Wow.
Okay? So there's a lot of things have transpired that people don't know, or they do not understand or see the significance of. But to me, that 1972 event in New York City was the proof that the people in New York, in Harlem, who should know, because you know how stuff moves in terms of information. Family to family, ear to ear, gossip and all this type of stuff. That this is in Harlem itself. And he was at the same location. What people don't know, Malcolm was killed 1965 on Sunday. On Tuesday, Temple number 7, Mosque number 7 was firebombed.
That's right.
And there's nobody's ever found out who did that. See, they were trying to get a war going on in Harlem between those who love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and those who love Malcolm. Okay? But here it is, and Mirza Farrakhan comes into that picture. He not only straightens up, cleans up, rebuilds the same building that was blown up, that was firebombed. He rebuilds the building, but then he rebuilds the Nation of Islam.
Yes.
To where when I joined in 71, I was eating 2 bean pies a day. There was bakeries everywhere. There was steak and takes everywhere. He had 22 schools. He had every borough had a mosque. This is what Farrakhan did. And I'm going to add this one other thing. And this new thing that's coming out, Who Killed Malcolm X, they're trying to give the credit to Malcolm X for the building of the Nation of Islam. And when they're talking about him, they show a picture of Mosque Maryam as though it was Malcolm's doings that allowed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to get Mosque Maryam. But guess what? Mosque Maryam was not bought by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad until 1972.
That's right.
Malcolm died in 65. So how can you give credit to Malcolm for Mosque Maryam? Give credit to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But nobody wants to give credit to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan because Minister Farrakhan, not only is he alive,
That's right.
he is strongly alive and carrying the word of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So they don't want you to see or understand the history of him. They want you to deal with Malcolm, who left no organization that exists.
That's right.
But they want you to follow him by any means necessary with a gun to get your head blowed off. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Get back to the questions, brother. I can go all
praise
day.
be to Allah. I'll just, before I get to the next question, and this is not picking on Malcolm, because a lot of people think we opening up old wounds, so on and so forth. But in truth, even based on the interview with Professor Smalls, Malik Zul-Shabazz did, Malcolm left splinter groups. And unfortunately, that's what we have today.
Well, I'm going to get to some of the things that were brought out by Mr. Smalls as we go down the list.
Yes, sir. Okay. Our next question. Why was Malcolm X suspended for 90 days and put on what we know as C time?
Okay. Number one, C time. C time is not suspension. C time, you're still a member of the Nation of Islam, but you can't do certain things. And Malcolm, what he couldn't do was speak to the press, was give lectures at colleges. He could teach in the mosque in Temple number 7. He was still over Temple number 7. He was still being on salary, and he was still the regional minister for the Nation of Islam. But he couldn't speak to the public, which he got so used to doing. Okay, now, why couldn't he go outside of the mosque and speak to the public? Because when Kennedy was killed, November 22nd, 1963, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm had set up, before this happened, it took a long time to set up big speaking engagements, but he had set up a big speaking engagement for December 1st, 1963, before Kennedy was killed. After Kennedy was killed, the messenger wanted to cancel it. But since Malcolm had put so much time and effort in it, he said, look, let me do it. I'll represent you. He said, okay, just don't mention Kennedy. Don't say anything about Kennedy because our people love Kennedy as well as the white people. So don't say nothing about Kennedy. So Malcolm went through the whole lecture, and he did not say anything about Kennedy. But then a reporter asked him about what does he think about Kennedy's assassination. And that's when he said, no one is sad when chickens come home to roost. All right? So he had gotten away until that question was asked, and he should have walked away, but he didn't. He said that, and that's what got him that time, that sea time. But he was not put out. Okay? Now,
That's right.
What's the next question?
Okay. Why did Malcolm ultimately split with the Nation of Islam?
Okay. Like I said, he was not put out. He was just suspended, not from his salary, not from his duties, not from teaching at the mosque, but from teaching on the outside.
That's right.
Now, what eventually he said, this is what Malcolm said. Malcolm said that he left the Nation of Islam because he found out some things about the personal life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's what he said in March of 1964 when he finally left. Cut this phone off before it started ringing. Before he finally left. Now, that's what he was over the domestic life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's why he said he left. Then later on, he goes to Mecca in April of 1964. And he sees white Muslims for the first time, so he says. But that was a lie. And that's one of the things that James Small said on December 23rd on Malik Zulu's blog talk, Black Power, that Malcolm knew better. Because he had been to Arabia on a number of times. And in particular, in 1959, he went there representing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because the messenger was coming there in December of 1959. So he went there before that time to make way for the messenger. So he saw white Muslims then, and I got a picture here of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in Mecca from December 23rd to the 24th on a camel in one picture, and in the crowd in another picture. And he looks good. He looks good.
Praise.
So he was in Saudi Arabia in December. He saw white Muslims too. But guess what? He had told Malcolm and all the ministers that Turkey is a whole nation of white Muslims. And if a person accepts Islam, if he's white, you must accept him as a brother.
That's right.
Watch him, because he might revert.
That's right.
But you must accept him as your brother and not call him a devil. Now that's what Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught him. And in the speech that Malcolm gave in The Godfather of Harlem, which was a lie, the real speech that we will talk about later on, he even said in that speech that Islam was to establish a universal brotherhood all over the world. He said that in that speech. That was June 23rd, 1963. So he knew about the universal brotherhood aspect of Islam because he taught it from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
That's right.
But he knew that the people didn't know, so he played a game with the people by saying, I found out there's white Muslims, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had lied to me. Well, that was a lie. He had seen white Muslims before. He was using that to try to get support for himself, because now he's out there by himself with no support, no protection, and so he's reaching for any straw he can pull on. Next question.
Now, was he telling the truth, talking about Malcolm X, about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, so-called sleeping with underage girls?
Well, also Professor Smalls, on December 23rd, 2019, in pointing out some of the mistakes that Malcolm made, he pointed out specifically that he knew, that Malcolm knew, that in Islam a man can have more than one wife. As a matter of fact, when Malcolm visited King Faisal in Saudi Arabia in 1964, he knew that King Faisal had 4 wives. So why would he turn against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for having more than one wife when he knows that you can have more than one wife in Islam? And he say he found Orthodox Islam, the real Islam, and he met with a king who has 4 wives. Okay, this is very dishonest. Very dishonest. Now, I'm just going to give us some actual facts here. You can add it up as you will. One of the wives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a pre-prison ex-girlfriend of Malcolm. This is somebody who became his girlfriend before he even went to prison. This was Sister Evelyn. And he had actually proposed marriage to Sister Evelyn in the nation. She joined the nation following Malcolm. But he changed his mind. He disappointed her. And he married Sister Betty instead. Now you can find that in Carl Evans' books. You can find it in Manny Marble's books. That she ran screaming out of the mosque when she found out that Malcolm had married Betty, had went to Detroit, took Betty to Detroit, and married Betty in Detroit. And she was stuck there in New York thinking that Malcolm was going to marry her. And she was destroyed. Now later on, John Ali, who was Malcolm's friend and secretary in New York, was recommended by Malcolm to become the national secretary because of his skills in economics and accounting for the nation in Chicago. And when John Ali took on the post of being the national secretary, he brought with him some of his helpers from New York, including Sister Evelyn and also Sister Lucille, who later on became wives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and bore children to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, you put yourself in the mind of Brother Malcolm. Here it is, your ex-girlfriend, who you have known for years, who loved you, and you chose somebody else. And it is written that he chose her, Sister Betty, because she was a professional and she was dark-skinned. He did not want to marry Sister Evelyn because she was light-skinned and he was light-skinned. Therefore, they might have a lot of light-skinned children, and that would not look good since he's talking all this black talk. So he spurned Evelyn for Betty, and then later on finds out that she is married to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and she has a child by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. In The Godfather of Harlem, in the first season, it's showing that Bumpy Johnson's daughter was on drugs, and she was taken off of drugs by the nation through Malcolm, bringing her into the nation. So she joined the nation and came off of drugs. Now, Malik Zulu asked James Smalls about that. And James Smalls, who was a consultant, because he'd known Malcolm since 65 and known his brothers and his daughter, his daughters and his Betty, his ex-wife, his widowed wife, and Ella, his sister. And he said, that's not true. That Bumpy Johnson's daughter never joined the Nation of Islam. Now, the reason that that's important, because in one of the episodes of The Godfather of Harlem, you have the Honorable Elijah Muhammad riding down the street in the back seat with Bumpy's daughter, propositioning her to come to work for him. Now, you see, that's some sneaky S-H-I-T, because what they're lining up is, oh, wow, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad propositioned Bumpy's daughter, who Malcolm had brought in off the streets. Now, if she happens to get pregnant in the next series, in 2020, then one can say, see, that was wrong. He impregnated a sister who Malcolm brought in off the streets. I can see why Malcolm was hurt. But no, that didn't happen. He married Malcolm's ex-girlfriend, and she got pregnant. All right? You know, hey, you dumped her, my friend, and you married Betty.
That's right.
So, you know, this whole thing of Malcolm and who killed Malcolm and all that, that's important, but it's really not as important as what was going on in Malcolm's head.
That's right.
And how he allowed the FBI and dirty tricks and John Ali, who was later proven to be an FBI informant, play games with his head, get him upset and jealous to make him make a mistake. You see, that's that brown germ. That's the red germ of the Egyptians, the red. And us with the nation is the brown. It's that part of the man who has his ego, who has his pride, like a lion who wants to have all the women. And the lion is such a jealous God that when he takes over the pride, he kills all the babies of the other king. That's how selfish and egotistical the lion is. So you got men like that who say, well, if I can't have it, can't nobody have it.
Right.
Even after they have, you divorced your wife and you see her with somebody else, you don't have a nerve to get jealous. You don't have a right to get jealous.
Right.
You divorced her. Okay? Well, Malcolm, he left her at the altar. So he has no rights to be jealous over what could happen. So we need to study that.
That's right. Because
unfortunately, these same things, the enemy continues to play with our ego. He's from 6,000 years ago. He was taught by Yaqub to go amongst us, telling lies to cause us to fight and kill one another.
That's right.
And he's still able to pull that off. We should have wised up by now and overcome that. If somebody says something to you about your brother, you take that person to your brother.
That's right.
And ask them, if my brother, did you say that in front of the person who said it? In other words, you don't allow nobody to come between you and your brother, you and your sister,
That's right.
you and your wife. You don't do that. Right. If they say something to you about somebody else, you get that person to say that same thing in that person's face that says something about you.
That's right.
See, that's called conflict resolution. That's what we got to do, because the enemy knows how to play us. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in 1997 in Birmingham, Alabama, he said that the white man has learned how to stimulate the brown germ in the black man. And through our weaknesses, he controls us. So getting rid of the white man is not going to happen until we get rid of the white man inside of us.
That's right.
That from which he was made, that brown germ. So the more important thing about this whole issue is the human psychological issue. Because we know the government did it, but they got all the records, and you're never going to find out exactly who did what. Because they're going to lie. They're going to continue to lie. They're going to put stuff in and take stuff out. They control the files. They probably even have a video, a movie of the actual assassination. That's how they do. But guess what? You ain't going to never get it until they win. And when they win, then when you gone, then they'll bring it all out and laugh at us and say, look how we tricked them. See, we tricked those who's supposed to have been led by God. That makes us the God. Okay? But but guess what? We're using Malcolm to expose them, because they keep raising up Malcolm, not us.
That's right.
And through him, we're going to show who's behind all of this confusion. These lying so-called Jews.
That's right.
Next question.
What kind of impact did the FBI have in fracturing the relationship between Malcolm X and his teacher by using agents, informants, and the media?
Well, I asked this question. You asked me a question. I'm going to ask this question.
Yes, sir.
Was the execution of Malcolm X staged by the U.S. government? Now, I'm going to give you some facts. And now the people are going to have to determine for themselves. Number one, FBI informant John Ali was pegged by Louis Lomax, a reporter, back in the 60s. He proved that John Ali was an informant because he said that he got information from an FBI officer that John Ali was an informant. And then the FBI sent him a letter, J. Edgar Hoover sent him a letter and told him, don't you write that no more, because he put it in an article. And J. Edgar Hoover wrote him and told him, don't you say that no more. Well, he put it in a book in 1968, okay, about John Ali working for the government. And then Louis Lomax wrote a script in 68 for the movie Malcolm X. And the government, FBI, sent somebody to the studio to get them to check the screenplay to make sure there was nothing in there incriminating to the FBI, particularly because they know that Louis Lomax had written in articles and wrote in a book that John Ali worked for the FBI. So they sent agents into the studios to make sure that that was not in the transcript, and indeed they did not use the screenplay of Louis Lomax. And in 1970, Louis Lomax was found dead by a car accident that the steering mechanism went out on his rental car. His wife sued the rental car agency and Ford. I don't know what happened to the suit. She sued him for $12 million because of the steering wheel malfunctioning. But Louis Lomax, he had proved that John Ali, the national secretary, the friend of Malcolm, with Malcolm for years, his secretary, and they even lived with John Ali and Malcolm even lived together when Malcolm first got married. They lived with John Ali and his wife. So they were very close. And John Ali was moved all the way to Chicago. Now, what was John Ali doing? Next, New York Police Department informant Gene Roberts. We know about Gene Roberts. He was on scene giving mouth-to-mouth to Malcolm, and he was his bodyguard. But what he also said, Gene Roberts, in an interview with Dan Rather, was that the week before Malcolm was killed, he witnessed a dress rehearsal of the assassination, where somebody said, "Get your hand out my pockets," and Malcolm said, "Hold it, cool it." Now, he took that to his superiors, and he don't know what they did with it, but all he knows is the next week, the exact same thing happened. Somebody said, "Get your hand out my pockets," and Malcolm said, "Hold it, cool it," and that's when they shot him. He opened up his arms, tell him to hold it, cool it, and that's when they shot him. Now, this is Gene Roberts, and he was not asked to testify at Thomas Hagen, also known as Talmadge Hayer. I mean, this man, is it Thomas Hagen or is it Talmadge Hayer? See, you know that he's an agent. He got all these different names. Right. How he had the different names in his early 20s? Okay, so anyway, but Gene Roberts was not asked to testify. Okay, the district attorney didn't even know anything about Gene Roberts being an agent. They didn't know this till much later. So he didn't even testify, but he was there on front row, on front post, meaning that he was looking out over the audience. So he would be able to see who it was who was doing the shooting. But they didn't even ask him to testify. But what he did testify is that he actually saw a dress rehearsal. Now, many people don't know that Alex Haley was from Naval Intelligence.
That's right.
And he is the one who interviewed Malcolm and did the autobiography of Malcolm X. But what people may not know is that there were missing chapters from the autobiography of Malcolm X that he took out from the autobiography, because in those chapters, Malcolm said a lot of anti-Semitic things about the Jews. And so they're trying to clean up his his image. See, the Jews would do that. Minister Farrakhan said that the Jews offered him that if he would stop being so mean against them, that after he died, they would make him the Messiah and clean up his act. And it's because he said if nobody is written of well if they treat us bad. So evidently they cleaned up Malcolm's act after they killed him and took things out of the autobiography that was anti-Semitic. It's the same way in the movie Malcolm X, done by Spike Lee in 1992. They never mentioned Yaqub's history. Okay? And the making of the white man. Because they don't want that. They don't want nobody to hear that. They don't want nobody to hear that. That, yes, you all only here 6,000 years ago. You were made on the island of Pelon, Patmos, out of black folk, to be an enemy to black people. They didn't want nobody to even hear that, even though Malcolm taught that. So they took it out of the movie. You're never going to hear that and nothing to come out of Hollywood on Malcolm. You never hear that, Yaqub's history, come out of his mouth. Now, the Yaqub's history is what many naysayers of the Nation of Islam, including all the Afrocentric people, they naysay that. They say that was silly, that's crazy. Okay? If it's silly, if it's crazy, why won't the GD white man even allow it to be in his movies when Malcolm said it? Why they don't even want that to come out of no actor's mouth?
Good point.
What Malcolm said about Yaqub. Y'all laugh at it, but the white boy ain't laughing. He gonna make sure it's never said again. You dumbasses. Okay. Now, conveniently, even Alex Haley died February 10th, 1992 from a supposed heart attack. Let me go back a little bit. Did y'all know that 1957, October 30th, that Malcolm X had a heart attack? He was only 32 years old. That's in the FBI files. Anyway, but Alex Haley died February 10th, 1992. And the movie Malcolm X came out November 18th, 1992, 9 months later. So Alex Haley was not here to verify whether the movie was in accord with the autobiography. But now we know that even the autobiography was tainted because they took out chapters from the autobiography to hide Malcolm's disdain for the Jews. So it's a bunch of lies, a bunch of deep, goddamn lies produced by the government spies.
That's right.
Now, coming out in Who Killed Malcolm X, it was on Fusion. It's supposed to come out in January on Netflix. We find out for the first time that there were 9 FBI informants in the Audubon Ballroom on February 21st, 1965. So when Malcolm was killed, there were 9 FBI informants. We know Gene Roberts was an NYPD informant, agent. Now we find out that the FBI had 9. 9? And none of these testified at Hagen's trial. Gene Roberts didn't testify, and none of the 9 testified. It sounds like a setup to me. And as a matter of fact, we have the FBI record that one of the informants, the FBI informants, called in to his boss at 3:10 p.m. on February 21st, 1965, to report that Malcolm was dead. Well, Malcolm didn't start speaking until 3 o'clock p.m., and he wasn't pronounced dead at the hospital until 3:15. So how did he call at 3:10 before he would even announce his being dead and say he was dead? He must have been involved with that assassination. And let me tell you something. The trial of Hagen, or Hare, whatever his name was in 1966. And it implicated the Nation of Islam in the assassination of Malcolm X. Like I said, none of these people were allowed to testify, who was right there. They didn't testify. The same year, a TV series Some of you old heads, you might remember it. Mission Impossible. I ain't talking about the movies, Mission Impossible. I'm talking about the TV series started in 1966. And the premise of that series of the Mission Impossible was to come in undercover, having masks and other disguises, to come in to do some dirty work, like assassinate somebody, but blame it on somebody else so they can get a war started, and they will slip out unbeknownst to anyone after they got that war started. Those was some of the basics behind Mission Impossible. So they came out with Mission Impossible after they had pulled this stunt off of this hoax, of this murder of Malcolm, and got away with it in the court. Now they make a movie, a TV series, showing you how they do it, how they did it with the dirty tricks, how slick they are. And now we know today you can buy a mask that looks exactly like another person.
That's right.
All right? So now there's shooting in drive-bys, and people, there's black folks shooting black folks. Is it? Or is it somebody wearing a mask? Okay? To get stuff started. Going back to this whole 6,000 years of coming and starting trouble amongst the righteous people, calling them to fight and kill one another. So we got 9 FBI informants. We got one of them who got on the phone and said that Malcolm was dead at 3:10, and Malcolm didn't start talking till 3 o'clock. And he wasn't even taken over to the hospital across the street to be pronounced dead. So y'all sit there and y'all fall for the government, if you please.
Which brings to mind a question just coming off of that one. You mentioned Thomas Hagen or Hayer, whichever one of the names he is.
Yes.
Was he ever a member of the Nation of Islam?
Well, you see now, when he testified on the stand in 1966, he said that he was never a member of the Nation of Islam. And he said that the 2 members of the Nation of Islam that were on trial had nothing to do with it, that he was paid to kill Malcolm, along with 4 other guys who were not in the nation. Now, that's what he said in 1966. However, in 1977, Consular steps in as his lawyer, and Consular has Hagen, who has changed his name to a Muslim name, to sign an affidavit stating that he was a member of the mosque in Newark. And the other 4 with him were members of the mosque in Newark. So he signed this affidavit. Okay? So when was he telling the truth? Was he telling the truth in 1966, where he said that he was never a member of the nation, and neither were the killers who was with him? Now, let me tell you something interesting. There were eyewitnesses in 1965 who said there was a Cuban-looking, olive-colored person who was shooting at Malcolm and ran out a side door.
That's right.
Now, what's interesting is Malcolm himself said that there was somebody that when he was in Cairo and he was eating, he got sick. Immediately he looked at the waiter, and that waiter was the same man that he had seen in New York following him around, who he described the same as the people give the description of that person who shot at him in the Audubon.
Wow.
He wasn't in the nation. He was never identified.
That's right.
So you see, this is Mission Impossible. You ain't gonna never find out who really did it. Now, in the Who Killed Malcolm X series, they're gonna track down the shotgun shooter. But the shotgun shooter died last year, October 26th last year. How come there's stuff on the internet, and people have been talking about it for years, of this man named Bradley, William Bradley, as being the shotgun man. The government never brought him in. Hager had put his name in. They never brought him in, and then they do this long thing, Who Killed Malcolm X, is coming out. You know, like I said, I saw it on Fusion, and they go through 6 parts series to get to the end, and he tracks down this man, and he finds out, oh my God, he's dead. Hell, he was dead a year ago, man. You playing us? Yeah, now you find him because he's dead. but he was an agent, and so he was protected. Even in the interviews, people they felt he was protected. So he was protected, but now he's dead. So now you can expose him. Oh yeah, he the one who killed Malcolm. Yeah, but what about the other people? See, they're gonna keep filing. They're gonna keep pulling people up. Okay, and then putting words in their mouth, and then but guess what? They dead, so you can't check it. Come on now. So to me, it's the government did it.
That's right.
And the key is they continue to do it. Why do they keep raising them up? Okay? Why do they keep raising them up? It's not us that keep raising them up.
That's right.
It's the government.